Over the last week, Valve's master plan for gaming dominance has begun to crystallize, and it is becoming increasingly clear that Valve has a path forward that can help them essentially complete the trifecta that no one has ever done. They are on the verge of getting all the Infinity Stones. They already have PCs, they've made a huge dent in handhelds, not to mention VR, but next, Valve are coming after home consoles. And I have to say, they are poised to succeed. Of course, they've come after home consoles before and the result was less than inspiring, but Valve then isn't Valve now, and things have changed more than a little bit. We are now at the point where 95% of the Steam library is playable without depending on Windows. Valve has also worked for years on being able to create their own hardware and lead the manufacturing effort and the entire supply chain from production to distribution. Valve also went through the realization that their hardware might just have to be a loss leader. They're willing to lose a little money on the hardware, knowing that they're going to gain it back and then some on the software. And Valve's entire 20-year journey with Steam has been about making PC gaming more convenient than ever. Steam Deck is nearly as streamlined as a traditional handheld, but with a lot more freedom. And to top it all off, the console ecosystem is overdue a shakeup. Sony won the PS4 generation handily and has had an easy time staying ahead of Xbox in this generation. Xbox is putting their games everywhere, and although they'll continue to make hardware, it's basically just a formality at this point. And Switch 2 is on the way, but all signs point to Nintendo rightfully playing it safe. Switch 2 looks like it's going to be a retread of everything that made the Switch so popular in the first place. And that's why this latest news is so fascinating. Leaks from Valve's own software now point to them working on a set-top box that's going to run their latest version of SteamOS. We already knew that they were working on a Steam controller. We know that they're working on a standalone VR headset codenamed the Deckard, and we know that they've been furiously hiring game developers to help build Half-Life 3, and now we learn that they're also working on this set-top box that is going to be light years ahead of what they did with Steam machines. Imagine if they release a new Half-Life as a sort of launch title to their new PC console. So in today's Deck News Roundup, we're going to talk about the new leaks, we're going to talk about how Valve plans to include other manufacturers in on the fun, and we're going to talk about the absolute insane week that PC gamers are having with Marvel Rivals, Indiana Jones, and Path of Exile 2. Sheesh! Honestly, it's been an insane week, and I hope you all enjoy this episode. Folks, whether you're downloading, online gaming, or streaming, I know how important it is to have high download speeds, low latency, and reliable internet. So I'm happy to tell you about today's sponsor, TP-Link, and their new Wi-Fi mesh, the Deco BE5000. With blazing fast Wi-Fi 7 speeds, the Deco 5000 eliminates frustrating buffering and disconnects, letting you focus on enjoying your games and your media. It blankets your whole house in reliable coverage up to 6,600 square feet, so you can stream flawlessly in any room, no more dead zones interrupting your gameplay or movie marathons. This powerful system lets you stream 4K and 8K content with ease, whether you're using Plex, Netflix, or YouTube, and with support for over 150 devices, it's perfect for smart homes overflowing with gadgets like mine. Voice controls with Amazon, Alexa, or Google Assistant add another layer of convenience. No more scrambling for the router when you need a quick Wi-Fi tweak. The Deco BE25 comes in 1-pack, 2-pack, and 3-pack options, starting at just $129. It's the unmatched value you need to get your home ready for the future of Wi-Fi. Check the links in the description to grab yours today. All right, so of course, we're going to start with Valve's new hardware. Valve has codenamed it Fremont. How do we know the Fremont exists and what do we know about it? Well, on the Steam Deck subreddit, there was a thread where one person found a new change in the Steam Deck kernel relating to Fremont. I looked into it from there, and there have actually been a few updates since then, and they all kind of relate to the same thing. They all relate to getting CEC working for Fremont. CEC stands for Consumer Electronics Control, and it's a protocol that's used on TVs, consoles, and receivers that allow them to interact with each other. So if you turn on your console and that turns on your TV, well, that's CEC. Or if you can control your soundbar's volume from your console, well, that is CEC as well. So you can see from the code that they're getting CEC working for some sort of prototype board. They even backported some changes from a more recent version of the Linux kernel, but ended up reverting that backport. Anyway, after I tweeted about this, Brad Lynch and his team of data miners looked into it further, and according to Brad, there are a few key points. First, Fremont has its own firmware being worked on, and Quanta Computer, who is the manufacturer of the Steam Deck, is giving feedback on this device, and developers at Valve are incorporating that feedback into the kernel here. Brad notes that F7 is the identifier used for the firmware that's powering each Steam Deck. So F7A was the Steam Deck LCD, F7G was Steam Deck OLED, and F7F is this Fremont device. And importantly, Brad points out that all the references to Fremont ensure checks for a full-size HDMI port, which is the sort of thing that you would see on TV-focused consoles. He also stressed that this cannot be a dock. All of this code lives in an AMD GPU driver, so yeah, that rolls that out. So essentially, we have brand new hardware from Valve using the same manufacturer as the Steam Deck with similar firmware to the Steam Deck. It would be using SteamOS, and it has an HDMI port hardwired to its GPU, and the GPU lives inside of the AMD APU, similar to the way the Steam Deck works, but also very similar to the way a PS5 works as well. Those are the facts as we know them so far. This is all prototype that Valve is doing on their end, so some of the details may evolve as Valve continues development. The way I see it, Fremont would likely cover a pillar that has been missing from Valve's hardware strategy so far, something that appeals to people that want high-end graphics at an affordable price like PS5 and Xbox Series X. It's something that could also strengthen the Steam Deck and the eventual Deckard because people could stream from their high-end Fremont to their low-powered friends. This would likely be sold with the new Steam controller too, and I would absolutely bet cold hard cash that everything we've heard about Valve ramping up development on the next Half-Life is because Valve would love to have Half-Life 3 ready as a launch title for Fremont. For all the people that said Valve did this before and failed, I mean, fine, but my main question to you would be, what is your actual point? Is your point that Valve would fail again? Is your point that it's not worth trying again even after Valve learned lessons the first time? Or is your point that you're personally not interested in what could potentially be an affordable high-end gaming PC? By the way, if it's that last one, then I want you to keep that same energy when this gets announced and released. I mean, we know that Steam machines failed, but I'm surprised that anyone would see Valve as the type to throw up their hands and say, well, there's nothing we can do. We should just never try again, especially after years and years of work on Linux, Proton, GameScope, Mesa, and more. So yeah, if you're skeptical that this would be a success, then sure, that is understandable. But many people were skeptical of the Steam Deck as well, and well, we see how that turned out. One thing about PC gaming and Valve's approach to it is that Valve is not going to keep all the fun to themselves. They recently released guidelines for brands that are partnering with them, and that includes companies that may release hardware that is powered by SteamOS. That's right, Valve is taking a huge step forward in making SteamOS available to hardware other than the Steam Deck. They say that the powered by SteamOS branding indicates that a hardware device will run SteamOS and boot into SteamOS upon powering the device. So that would exclude devices that are dual boot or Windows by default. The guidelines also designate partners and manufacturers will ship hardware with a Steam image in the form provided by and or developed in close collaboration with Valve. This means that it would have to be an official version of SteamOS as opposed to something like Hollow ISO. Valve has said several times that they would like to work with other handheld manufacturers like Asus to get SteamOS working on those handhelds first before they make it available to a broader audience. So this could definitely be a step in that direction. Given the timing, it seems likely that we'll see the first non-Valve devices powered by SteamOS as early as 2025. Interestingly, there are also guidelines in here for Steam-compatible hardware, specifically input peripheral devices like control pads. Steam-compatible control pads need a dedicated Steam button, quick access menu button, view and menu buttons, ABXY buttons, and at least 2 auxiliary rebindable buttons. Not only that, but Valve also requires that these pads have gyroscopic controls and capacitive touch sensing thumbsticks. Interestingly, there's nothing in here about trackpads, so that seems like something that Valve is likely to keep for themselves. In any case, we already know about the Steam HoriPad, and a couple of weeks ago I told you about the new Steam GameSir controller, but this seems to pave the way for even more third-party Steam controllers on the way. Here's hoping to see one from 8BitDo or GullyKit. Outside of powered by SteamOS and Steam-compatible hardware, Valve also updated branding guidelines for games on Steam, hardware that includes Steam out of the box, cafes, and other physical attractions where you can play Steam games, Steam VR-compatible hardware, and Steam Link-compatible hardware. So PC Mag conducted a Reader's Choice survey for 2024 to find out what their readers consider to be the top gaming hardware brands, and Valve ended up topping the list. They won the best handheld gaming system brand and also had the highest overall satisfaction for all gaming system brands. Surprisingly, MSI Claw is also pretty high on this list, so who knows, but interesting development nonetheless. PC gaming has had an incredible week, and I gotta say, for the first time in a long time, I am actually playing the new big hero shooter. It's too soon for me to say if Marvel Rivals does anything special, but so far it's mostly just the Overwatch formula with the characters I love. But there were a couple things that made me want to at least try this game. The first is that it is actually Steam Deck compatible. As of late, the trend for big online multiplayer games has been to actually remove Steam Deck compatibility and to cite cheating as a concern. We saw it with GTA Online and then Apex Legends, but thankfully NetEase said that they were supporting this game on the Steam Deck. So I gave this game a try on my Steam Deck OLED and on my ROG Ally X using Bazite, and I gotta say I am impressed. There are some small quirks to deal with. For example, there are cutscenes that don't render properly, and you do have to bring up the virtual keyboard to enter your name. But overall, I was really impressed that I was running this on a handheld at all. For gyro users like myself, I should point out that Rivals has an annoying sound effect and notification when you swap between control pad and mouse input. That can be kind of grating, so you might be better off making a full keyboard and mouse profile using Steam input. The second thing that made me want to try this game was the way that NetEase approached all of their monetization stuff. Battle Pass rewards are not only available for a limited time, you can earn cosmetics by playing the game. The only purchasable items at all are cosmetics, and all the currency stuff is like a one-to-one exchange. I really appreciate that the developers genuinely tried to avoid all of the scummy stuff you see in these sort of games, and I'm impressed at how the game turned out. I didn't even notice or hear about any server issues, and that's even as Marvel Rivals managed to top 450,000 concurrent players over the weekend on Steam alone. That put it in the top 3 games currently played on Steam, until of course one game did top it. So between Marvel Rivals and Path of Exile 2, Blizzard must be having a tough week in the office. Path of Exile 2, of course, is the highly anticipated action RPG that released to early access late last week, and people seem to be loving it. It has had over 560,000 concurrent players. It's playable on the Steam Deck and has great control pad support, but there appear to be areas in the game where the frame rate will dip into the low 30s. According to Steam Deck HQ, the developers have stated that they're aiming for a 40 FPS experience on the Steam Deck, and SDHQ also confirms that they managed to hit that most of the time. Nonetheless, this game is still in early access for at least the next 6 months, and performance is likely to improve as we get closer and closer to the full release. And then there was the debut of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which has been getting great reviews. Of course, it's an ambitious game that struggles on the Steam Deck, but performance on the Ally is fairly impressive. Shout out to DeckWizard for showing how this game performs on different handhelds. Personally, I was happy to hear that the Nuvo was not going to be used on the final product and was only in the review builds, essentially to prevent any leaks. One other impressive note about the new indie title is that you can enable Xbox cloud saves. I don't have an Xbox, but this is an incredible quality of life feature for anyone that does. I did end up buying this and Path of Exile 2. So yeah, this has been an expensive week for me. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you're all having a wonderful week. Deck Gang out. Goodbye.